Chris, we finally got you here, man. It is so fabulous to see you today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Robert Harrington, leader of the RH Trio, leader of RH Music and Art Studios. And I want to tell a little bit about you. So I know you as jazz saxophonist extraordinaire, one of my favorite people to play saxophone, truly. And so many great things, man. I mean, it's just a lot, man. It's just cool to see your face right now with the pandemic and stuff going on.
Good to see you, man. We haven't played together in a while. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has been, man. It has been. So anyway, so tell people, about you, any kind of plug you got going on right now, anything you want people to know right now, man.
Yeah, just trying to stay as busy as possible right now, obviously. Teaching at Georgia State. I do lessons over there, combos, different things like that. A lot of projects that were going before the pandemic happened. We had just recorded a big band record with Rebel Big Band that we put out. That was a lot of fun. We did the release show, and then it was like right before everything shut down. So hoping to get that started back up again once it makes sense to put a giant original music big band back together.
I gotcha.
Was doing stuff with the Cheap Ensemble. We were having a lot of fun with that. We put out a record. We did some touring up in the Northeast. We had some plans to go over to the West Coast, just kind of areas where sort of more of that bassless kind of trio was kind of more popular.
Yeah.
More recently, kind of a project that we just started up with Tyrone Jackson is actually a bassless organ trio with vocalists. So it's Tyrone is playing sometimes organ, but essentially most of the time left hand key bass, and then right hand either piano or organ, kind of switching it around. It's got Jack Jones on drums, and then kind of a newer vocalist on the scene, Flo Essence, who's a student of Tyrone's on vocals. So we did a couple of shows this past month. We did a show at over there at Elliott Street. What was that?
Yeah.
Elliott Street. And then he's just about to announce another show coming up. We're gonna do a Halloween show, but I won't beat him to the punch. I'll let him plug his show first before
I got you, man.
But just staying busy, doing a lot of playing. I've got to head up to Charlotte after we get off the phone here. We're doing a Duke, Ella, and Aretha tribute. It's kind of an interesting kind of like from swing to soul kind of tribute up in Charlotte at kind of a newer venue, but just staying busy, man.
No, that's excellent, man. That's excellent, man. All that sounds fantastic. And so I'm excited for everything that you just said there. All right. So let's talk about something that brought us together here, Trap Montgomery, and its release day, which is really exciting, man. It's release day. All right. So I know, right? So that's my first question, man. So, when I came to you with the track, right, it was like bare bones, right? It was the scratch, you know what I mean? And so from then to now, what do you think about the track? Like, like from hearing it first off to like what it sounds like now?
Yeah, so that's always an interesting challenge too. When you're recording on something and you're one of the earlier instruments that are part of making because you have to kind of, same thing, because you put the bare bones down, that I was recording to. You have to kind of try to think ahead, but I think this is the fun part about recording also. You have to kind of think ahead and try to see, okay, what is this supposed to sound like as the finished, like what is the vibe of the finished product? And so my goal, first of all, when you send me the track, when it's a situation like that, is I just want to give you as many different possibilities to work with, so that hopefully you won't hate everything I send you, and you'll find something in there. You'll find something in there you like that's like, yeah, this is the vibe, because that's the fun part about recording for somebody. It's like I'm trying to get inside your head and see like what are you, Robert Harrington? What are you thinking? What is the vibe of this track? What do you want it to be? And I think to hear, where it came from to what it sounds like now, is the track just sounds great. The track just sounds awesome. So yeah, I'm really pleased with how it came out.
Awesome. That's excellent. So the next thing I wanted to ask you was basically, wait, I gotta check my notes. It's early. We got notes today. This is how important this is. We got notes. So, all right. So my favorite part of the song is actually your solo, man. Dude, it's like it brought so much life to the song, man. I was like, whew. And then on this particular EP, I was leading almost everything. And I was like, I gotta have somebody take the lead on something where it's not just more guitar, more guitar, more guitar. And so I definitely wanted sax in there. All right. And so what goes through your mind when you're soloing? But now before you answer that, when I've heard you play, when I've of course played with you, and when I've seen you playing in concert live, you always play amazing stuff. Like, and that's not true about everybody. We're going to be honest here. Hey, this is my shit. You know, we're going to be honest here, right? Like, that's not you. Sometimes you're like, hey, that wasn't really amazing. But whenever I see you, I really think it's amazing, man. And what stems that creativity? Because you're always seeming like you're in the moment, man. So tell me about that.
Well, I appreciate that because I think I played plenty of awful solos, but I would say my only goal when I solo is the reason why I almost always exclusively close my eyes when I solo is because I want to receive what the other musicians around me are sending to me, and I want to play something that communicates with them, and I want to play something that is in some way original to anything else that I've played before. Which might mean that I might totally trip over my shoelaces and fall on my face because I'm not really prepared to play the line that I just tried to play. But I'm willing to accept that for the possibility that 2 or 3 of the notes I play might actually sound really cool. Okay. So that's kind of always my goal. And I think it's the fun, rewarding part of music because, you know, and I'm not saying I still don't fall into the trap of that we all do of playing the same comfortable lines and licks and things like that we feel. But I think, you know, just trying to fight it is the most, just trying to fight the urge to go back and play what you know and what you're comfortable with, to try to communicate with the other musicians and just play something original in the moment, I think is huge.
Okay. I think that's interesting. So Chris, something I started doing with my practice routine, kind of like a product of the pandemic, if you will, was a music meditation. And so basically I try to just create from the space, as I call it. And so I just play, and whatever note comes to mind, I try to play. I just try to make ideas emerge. But you know how it is. If I play a quote unquote wrong note or something, I just try to live with it and keep going. Because I had a tendency, like if I want to play a certain idea, I was really trying to get out of that, like that comfort zone. You're saying like, oh, play a line that you know, or you know it's going to sound good here. The reality is you don't know if it's going to sound good there or not, because it's a whole new moment, right? So I was really trying to just let whatever emerges emerge, and if it comes out the way I like, right, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't. So that's pretty cool. All right, so my next question for you. All right, so this is a pretty cool question. So of course, in jazz, we do all types of stuff. I mean, we both have backgrounds in straight ahead jazz, yada, yada, yada. But, you know, jazz is such a big field now. It's almost like, you know, with the additions of smooth jazz and all the jazz fusions, all that kind of stuff. So with this type of tune, how do you think it's going to be received in jazz communities? Or would you even call it jazz? Because sometimes I don't really think about it truly as just jazz.
Yeah, I think we've kind of reached a point in the history where it's kind of very ambiguous in terms of what is jazz music and what's not jazz music, because what you're trying to do a lot of times, you know, if you're, let's say, if you're a critic or a writer or somebody that analyzes recordings to try to put them, is you're trying to assign it a place in a box in jazz history. So you're trying to relate it to something that's already happened. When you say a track is, oh, this is a funk track, or this is fusion, or this is bebop, this is swing, these are all eras that already happened. And in the moment that they happened, they weren't referred to as, oh, this is bebop music. It was jazz music. Yes. And then later it was later assigned the title of bebop music. So you can't really, you can say that it sounds like it has elements of this style in it. It sounds like it has elements of that style in it. But, to immediately define and try to assign a label to music that has just happened doesn't really work that way.
Mm,
History has shown us that you kind of have to let music sit for about 20 to 30 years before you can really kind of understand what happened to that particular era of music. So, so is it jazz music? It absolutely has elements of jazz music. Does it have some smooth elements? Absolutely. Does it have some R&B and soul? Absolutely. So it has a lot of different elements of styles of music, because obviously you're going to pull from all these different styles that you studied and that you learned coming up. So it's going to have all those influences in there, but it's music. And, you know, not, people are going to put labels on any music that comes out, but I personally don't think it's worth stressing about.
yeah, I agree, man. And well spoken, Professor Otts. I love the answer there. That's awesome answer. All right, I'm gonna move to my next question. All right. Okay. So let's see what I got here. I got a couple other things. All right. So the most important question here is, why do you think people should listen to this tune? People close to you, people who know you, your family, or whatever. Your work is important in the community, and why should people listen to this work that you're featured on?
Well, mom's going to listen to it anyway, right? So we're not trying to sell mom on it. I think people should listen to it because of all those elements that we just discussed. It has a lot of elements of jazz, but it's also got R&B and soul, and it's a very deep track. And I think, I think people should listen to new music. I think it's good for you. I think it's healthy. I think you should expose yourself to new music because it's good for your brain. I think it's an awesome track that has great musicians on it, and I think you're a strong up and coming artist that people need to hear about. So,
Oh man, thanks so much. All right, man. So Trap Montgomery is going to be out. Well, it's out today. I've been saying it's going to be out so long.
it is out,
but it's out today. All right, let's switch gears, man. So, Trap Montgomery is cool to talk about, but I want to talk about you, man. All right. So my main thing is, of course, I've already complimented you on your skills as a musician, right? And yada yada yada. We can go all around that. But how did you get into playing saxophone, man? Like,
pure randomness. Actually, so my first instrument as a child wasn't saxophone. I played the violin very horribly for about
really?
a year in the fifth grade, and then I got to middle school, and I was like, I don't really want to do orchestra anymore. So I signed up for band, and I went and tested out some instruments, and I was like, oh, the saxophone looks cool. So I tried it out a little bit. And my band director was like, hey, we need somebody to play tenor. Can you do that? I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll play tenor. And so
Okay.
I just picked it up randomly. And I started playing it. I was like, this thing's pretty cool. And then a year later, my uncle had heard that I'd started playing the saxophone, and he loved jazz music. So he gave me my very first record, kind of late in my sixth grade year, and that record was "Blue Train" by John Coltrane.
Oh man!
So I didn't try to transcribe it right on. I didn't have the skills to transcribe it or even really understand it. I was just like, wow, that dude sounds really good.
Yeah,
I want to sound like that guy. And then so that kind of spurred it, and that's always just like the first note that I heard him play, when it breaks out of the ba-da, ba-da-da, and then that first note that he plays going into his solo, I'm like, what? Like it can sound like that. It can sound that fat. Like, because that's like the peak. That's like peak, in my opinion, in terms of in the progression of Coltrane's tone. That's like the height of his powers.
Wow.
From a tone perspective. Obviously, he went into a lot of different eras as a player, but just that, like, man. So
Okay.
so that's what spurred it on for me, and then I was like, you know what? I think I want to play music.
Well, dude, man, sometimes, man, I sit back and reflect, and For me, it was Wes Montgomery and George Benson, man. Like
Mm-hmm.
hearing their stuff. But of course, I didn't start with jazz, man. I started actually playing rock and roll, Jimi Hendrix, playing the
Yeah.
blues out in Texas. And then when I came here, I started playing jazz in Atlanta. But it's something about when you join, your heroes and playing their music, and then you're playing all this great stuff, and you're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
you're like, it
it's
works. Yeah.
like, yeah. So like when you say like, hey, I mean, you're with Coltrane to me, man. Like, you know what I mean? Just keep climbing, man. All right. So let's see. All right, next. Okay, so we got to talk about jazz some more. We've been talking about jazz a lot. All right, so this thing, jazz, man, it can be easy to fall into this trap where you're playing standards all the time, or you're playing in certain eras a lot, especially with being at Georgia State, all that type of
Mhm.
stuff. It kind of forces you into a box sometimes. What keeps you in jazz though? In that going back to that box, so to speak.
Well, I think it's the foundation for every form of music that was created in the 20th century,
Mm,
along with blues. So, you take it back to, and you said you started studying rock, you started studying blues. Blues
mm,
music, as it originated in the Mississippi Delta region in the 1800s, is the foundation of American music. So,
yeah.
if you want to play American music, which is global music at this point, how are you going to do that without studying the blues? How are you going to
Mm,
do that without studying early jazz music? How are you going to do that without studying all these, everything from the rhythm, from the harmony, the melodic structure? It all comes from this music. So how can you tell me that you're authentically studying all these other styles of music if you didn't study that?
yeah. Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from with that.
I got you. No, I
You
got,
know,
I got you. I totally agree.
um, and then on the flip side, you can't stay trapped in that box. I see tons of people that will, they're like, oh, I love practicing standards, and they'll practice standards, and they'll stay in the practice room, but they won't ever go out and play music with other musicians.
Mm,
And so when they try to go get a gig, they have no skill, they have no relatable skills to actually play with other musicians. So you have to go out, you have to interact with other people, you have to play live music with them, you have to play together. And then it's critically important to develop your own original music, because all of your heroes, they weren't they weren't exclusively playing cover songs their whole
mm,
life. They
yes.
played they played the classic music, but then they wrote their own original music and they performed it, and that's what grew their legacy, and that's what grew their ability, and shaped their careers.
Mm.
So it's all of those things. Yes, you have to, in order, you have to be able to authentically articulate the lineage by studying those things that we talked about, but you also have to produce and pursue your own music in order to grow, I think.
Dude, Professor Otts in the building, man. All right. All right. All right. So, I got to ask you this, even though you talked about it some. Tell us a little bit more about the Cheap Ensemble, and then, of course, Rebel Big Band. Just tell us a little bit more about these projects, why you like working with them specifically, like what keeps you working with these groups, because a person of your caliber can be touring, doing anything you want to do, but you work with these groups for a reason. And what is that reason?
uh Original, authentic music.
Mm,
That's it.
I hear
uh
that.
I like playing music. I play. I'm blessed and I'm lucky enough to get called for a lot of work in the Atlanta area, and I'm very thankful for all the work I get called for. I'm very thankful for my teaching. Um, but it all helps me pursue original opportunities, and that's what I'm all
Mm,
about. All about working with anybody that is just authentically trying to create their own original music. And the Cheap Ensemble, for example, was a really it's a really fun challenge because there's no bass player. It's guitar, saxophone, and drums. I got to bring my
mm,
pedal board. Sometimes maybe I'll handle the role of the bass. Other times
wow.
we'll put out it entirely. Sometimes we'll abandon strict form constructs or rhythmic constructs. So it's almost like, yeah, I mean, it's free jazz. And
Mm,
you
yes.
know
I love that record, man. That Matrix tune is
Thank
awesome.
you.
Sorry.
Yeah, but you know, it is very, it's very mentally stimulating and rewarding too. I had an absolute blast with that. So that's what drives me to that project. And the two people that I do it with, Dana Fitzsimons and Patrick Arthur, are both beautiful humans and beautiful musicians. Rebel Big Band was all about, how do we take this classic staple of jazz history, and you know, and we weren't not the only people. There are tons of incredible modern big bands out there, but how do we take the idea of the big band and put our own influences, our own sound on it? So along with Zach Evans, incredible saxophonist, composer, producer in town, who is really the chief architect of the project. I'm just lucky enough that he brought me along on the ride. You know, we composed music that matches our personal influences, whether it be, you know, obviously all of the swing, you know, the jazz eras, you know, more modern stuff like rock, hip hop, you know, different things like that. And just how do we merge that into this big band setting and create music that's just, you know, more modern and a newer take on that. And you know, those were kind of the two most recent records that I did. I'll probably do another record in my own name at some point. It's probably been about, I think it's been about 6 or 7 years since I did my record just by myself. It's an exhausting project, as you found out with everything you're doing.
Yes, man. All right. So I hate this, man. This is what I tell everybody. I'm looking at the clock and the time is slipping. And I know we both got.
Stop talking.
No. I love you talking, man. I don't get to hear you talk enough, man. This is a great opportunity for me, man, because I mean, dude, it's fantastic. But I got to get to these other questions, man, because this is such a good interview, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, because it's like I get to go from being Robert to Professor Harrington with Professor Otts. I don't get to have these conversations all the time. So, all right. So I'm flipping over here, and okay. We're going to do some quick one-offs. Try to give me these answers as quick as you can here, Chris. So what do you think about modern music production versus the old days?
Always growing. Technology is always changing. So if it's good music, it's good music. If it's bad music, it's still bad music.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. Now, a lot of artists are on Instagram, making short clips, Facebook, all that type of stuff. Is Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, is all that stuff really helping artists, or do you think it's hurting artists?
I think it's doing both. I think first of all, you need to make sure you can actually play, and then second of all, make sure it's a vehicle to promote your music. I think it's very powerful in that way, but just make sure you can play.
I got you. All right. Next question. Okay. So this is kind of related. So there's a lot of music saturation out there, of course, with services like Spotify and all that kind of stuff. And so when we look back in the day, when of course it wasn't as much music saturation, I feel like you had, you know, more authentic artists. Let's, like we were talking about, authentic music. You know, I think of people like Miles, like Stevie Wonder, like, you know, just so many great people who you might not even have even heard in this time. But, you know, of course we can't cross back in time and stuff. So how do you feel about all this music saturation? So many people all over the world, you can hear them at once. What does that do to the mind?
I got to answer this one quickly.
All right, take your time. Take your time if you can. Take your time if you
can. You know, I think maybe what doesn't get mentioned enough is if this technology existed back then, they would have all used it too. You know, the reality is we're given the tools to work with that we are, and we would be stupid to not use social media as a vehicle to promote our own art and our own music. I still think greatness in general still rises to the top. I think a lot of those guys would have, and I think a lot of those artists still would have been heard. I mean, you look at somebody like Jacob Collier, who blew up and is now a global icon based on YouTube videos he recorded in his room in his parents' house. What made his videos blow up were not just that they existed, it was that he was an incredible musician. So I still think greatness would still rise to the top, and I still think we would have heard those artists, and I think we'll still hear lots of great artists that will explode out of their social media fame.
Okay.
And the bad ones too, but that is what it is.
Okay. And then, all right, last question here. Okay. Now, this one definitely take your time on. So there's been so many different reactions and responses to the pandemic. And of course, we know how it affected the music community. It was just like somebody blew out a candle almost. like whew, everything is gone, so to speak. What do you think about how the pandemic has affected musicians, musicianship, and tell us about how it's affected you personally, Sam?
Um, I think first of all that it was extremely tragic, and it's been a really horrible situation. Um, I think once you acknowledge that and once you accept that, you look, and it was a tremendous learning opportunity for the planet. It was also a
Mm,
tremendous learning opportunity for us as musicians, and for me personally. It made me realize my priorities, what's important to me, and it made me decide that I'm going to prioritize things that make me happy, because you have a
mm,
finite amount of time, and why would you spend any of it being miserable?
I agree. I totally
So
agree.
so now I just pursue things that make me happy with 110%, and I cut out everything else.
Man, that's a
And
that's a
that's it.
great response. That's a great response, man.
That's it. And I've been way less stressed since then.
I agree. For me, a lot of the same things. I used to focus on a lot of other things, but now I actually focus on peace. Whatever I feel like brings me peace, that's what I focus on
Yeah.
now. All right, man. So we got to wrap it up, man. I don't want to wrap it up. I really don't. And this has been so enjoyable, but the day
Likewise.
has to keep going. You know how it is, man. Thank you so much for being on the record. And dude, I mean, there's another tune. I got to have you on it, man.
Hit me up. Let's do it.
All right, man. That's gonna be on Suite 2. So we're trying to get Suite 1 out the door, man. Awesome.
Fair.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being here. I love this interview. I love your responses. It took me to another place. I hope you enjoyed it too. We're gonna get this out, and then of course, I gotta say the cheesy stuff, as I say. Like, comment, subscribe, follow my man Chris Otts 14 on Instagram. Show him some love. He's the man. All right. Anything you want to say to the people, Chris, before we get out of here?
Appreciate you, Robert. Can't wait to check out the rest of it.
All right, man. Thank you so much. And that's it.